Okay, let's move on to Margaret. We have Margaret Kim. She's spent her life seeped in the culture of business, growing up the daughter of a finance professor. Her thinking was framed by the time value of money, expected value, and positive NPV. She went on to complete an MBA at Rutgers and earned her CPA while working as an auditor at Ernst Young. Following a period working in corporate accounting, she completed a PhD in accounting at Arizona State. She has a passion for social justice and underserved communities and is currently exploring how commerce can be used to further those passions. Margaret, on to you.
Unmute myself. All right. So thank you so much for that introduction, Nick. And also thank you again to the organizers and to the other speakers in this session. So, Nick went through my background as far as I grew up grading the true and false and multiple choice or my father's finance exams. And, he was teaching me how to play blackjack, using blackjack to explain expected value. And so I've been spending the past 6 years teaching accounting at Cal State Fullerton. And so my experience and my background has kind of helped me think about, has exposed me to the reasons why we've fallen into this compartmentalization. Alex in his talk, he alluded to, a lot of people think about work and then their social impact as two separate and distinct things. And my argument is business schools. And so even if you didn't get an MBA or get a business degree, those are your managers, those are the business school culture has really shaped capitalism, how it works in, especially in the United States. And so we've fallen into this thinking where we just, even in our language, we think of for-profit and not-for-profit. And we think of not-for-profits doing that social impact work. And we think of for-profits being profit being the only motivation. And so, it leads people to, in their personal life, to think, oh, I'll make money in the business world using the business world's ethos of profit above all, and then use that money to give to causes close to my heart. And so as far as how business school contributes to this compartmentalization is that, for simplicity in business education, speaking as a professor, right, I have to assign grades. Right. And so for me to assign grades, the easiest way to do it is if there's a right answer. Right. And so what has happened is that we reduce everything to dollars. Right. So it makes it easier to teach. It makes it easier to grade. Right. So you're going to calculate the net present value of 2 projects' cash flows and then choose the project with the higher number. So you just plug the numbers into the formula and you get a right answer. However, right, if taking you back to Econ 101, they should have acknowledged, right, you're learning utility curves and everybody's trying to maximize utility. But utility is going to be more than just money. And we understand that on a personal level, right? We understand that sometimes, when we're making personal decisions as far as, let's say, buying an airline ticket, right? So I could buy the cheapest ticket. I could fly Spirit, but I want to be able to choose my seat. I want to have a little bit more leg room, right? So the utility I get from having a more comfortable flight is worth paying more money, right? So in that case, we have that conception of utilities more than just dollars. And so, but then we forget that when we're in business school, and then we just narrow down on money as the only measure. And as an accountant, I know that I contribute to that, right? So what do we judge the companies when we're judging results of a company? We do it by the bottom line, right? And that bottom line is that net income is calculated using dollars. So, but when I'm teaching my introductory intermediate accounting, I acknowledge that there are limits to what financial statements can tell us. They only tell us one part of the company, because there's going to be non-financial information like brand reputation that cannot be quantified in dollars. So we acknowledge that up front, but then because the rest of the course is all focused on numbers and dollars, and what is the major news that companies convey, it's all their financial reports, right? Accounting is trying to work at developing reports for social impact, but for the most part, that stuff is separate. You have your financial results, and then you have your corporate responsibility reports. And so really, if we're thinking about utility and the impact that a company is having, it really should incorporate both, right? So think about like fossil fuel companies, right? So yeah, they're generating all these profits, but then they're causing environmental damage. And so that really should temper, right? We should discount the results of the company if we consider their social impact. And so, again, it's easy to fixate on what's in front of you and forget what's left out. And the part of this is also that we're using completely different metrics to evaluate social impact, right? So this focus on dollar measures to get the right answer, equaling, when you go out into practice, that the right answer becomes the right business decision. And that's led us to myopic thinking and bad decisions. So that short-term maximization of profit has led to overutilization of resources, right? So overfishing that, over time decimates industries. And so, I think a lot of people talk about late stage capitalism. And I think there's that recognition that this short-term thinking that results from putting profit above all is really starting to yield some really bad results, right? And so what we thought was the right answer probably isn't. And so now kind of talking about, I want to give you courage, right? To not leave your heart at the door when you walk into work, right? So this is kind of going along with what Alex was talking about as far as, how can you have social impact at work? How can you, on a personal level, right, maximize your utility at work, right? That your time is valuable, and money, your salary, your hourly wage, that's just one way you're getting compensated for your time. So I want you guys to think about being compensated through meaning as well. And as Alex had talked about, sometimes that, if you value meaning more than money, right, that may mean moving to a job where you're going to take a pay cut if you really believe in the cause and the vision. But even if you're not in a position to move to kind of a more enlightened company, there are other things that you can do to make sure that your time at work aligns with your personal values, that it's not, you don't view it as antithetical. And that that you're working on things that you have to in your free time, you work to reverse, right? So as far as for instance, like income inequality, right? So is your job exacerbating income inequality, and then or homelessness, right? And then you have to work in your free time to kind of reverse those effects. And so, but just to kind of give you courage, if you're not already working at an enlightened company that sees kind of a more holistic view of utility, right, and is seeking to have social impact at work. So, kind of to give you courage to make suggestions to make your workplace have greater social impact, your employer have greater social impact. There's a lot of evidence that social impact is not incompatible with the profit motive, right? So even if your company still has the philosophy and is chasing, net income and earnings per share, you can still bring meaning into work and not fear that it's going to butt heads with your company's philosophy. So, there was a 2015 literature review that aggregated evidence from more than 2,000 empirical studies of that looked into social investing. So as far as companies that have some sort of, that include some sort of social impact, and that's part of their vision, or part of, even if that's not part of their vision, that they're trying to incorporate socially responsible practices in their business. And so roughly 90% of those 2,000 studies found that socially responsible businesses were correlated with positive cash flow, and that this relationship appears to be stable over time, which makes sense because socially responsible usually involves having long-term thinking, right? So, and as far as looking at the consumer side, you look at the trend towards socially responsible consumption. So you're looking at companies like Tom's Shoes or Ben and Jerry's, right? So that's a way to differentiate your product, a way to decommodify it, right? So Ben and Jerry's, right? There's a lot of different kind of unctuous ice creams out there, but they set themselves apart by being socially responsible, right? And so you can escape that race to the bottom, just where customers are just comparing based on price. And this is borne out in a paper published in Marketing Science in 2017. So they found that customers were willing to pay more when they knew a portion of the proceeds went to charity. And then also you have companies that are rewarded for taking political stands, right? So you have the example of Nike and Colin Kaepernick. And for Nike, their most recent results in June exceeded revenue forecasts by over $1 billion. It was up 96% year over year, with adjusted earnings per share almost doubling expectations. And then kind of going along again with Alex's talk, right? So there's also not just for you personally, as far as having your time spent at work, being compensated with meaning in your time at work, but also there are areas where companies can have greater impact than an individual. So bringing your whole self to work and working towards social impact at your job is actually can be more impactful. So again, these are very general and high level examples, but you look at Delta and Coca-Cola in their advocacy with the Georgia voting rights, PayPal pulling out of a planned facility in North Carolina over the transgender bathroom bill that discriminated against transgender individuals. And going all the way back to 1990 with the NFL pulling out the Super Bowl from Phoenix until Arizona recognized Martin Luther King Day. And so just want to finish off as far as talking about the call to action, right? So this is all fine and well, but how do I implement this in my work, right? How do I actually implement this? I'm not in a position, if you're not in a position to, release a press, make a statement to denounce on behalf of your company to denounce the erosion of voting rights. You can do this in smaller ways. And how to think about this, ask yourself some questions like, what are you proud of? What legacy do you want to leave? And so thinking about what are you proud of? If you're proud of, your children, what can you do at work to enable others to raise their children well? Could you advocate for extended parental leave? Or could it be as small as offering to do some sort of job share with a coworker so that would enable them to do the school pickups, right, for their children, or even just starting an informal lunch group for parents at your workplace to gather, share experiences, advice, and brainstorm ways to make your workplace more conducive to parenting. Thinking about what legacy you want to leave, right? Thinking about, I want to build $1 billion business and then make a big donation to my alma mater. think about why that's important to you, and then ask yourself, what can I do at work to make a similar impact? Was it that you saw your alma mater as creating opportunity? Then what can you do at work to create opportunity to others? Can you volunteer to recruit for internships at a non-elite school? Can you just even offer informal mentoring to a person of color or from some other marginalized group, right? Even just being an ally, right? As far as speaking up for people at work, as far as in a meeting, like, making sure that people get their credit. And just know that, again, like, this is an ideal time to do this, because this tight labor market is that you as an employee have more power than ever to make demands and requests of your employer. So I know I've given a lot of like really pat suggestions, but hopefully these are just ideas to get you thinking. And really the important thing is to think about what's important to you and what are the resources and opportunities around you. So think about what passions you delegate to your off work hours, what causes you donate to. And so I want to challenge you to think creatively and to challenge what you've been taught. I can't predict the ways in which following your heart will manifest itself in your workplace, but I can say that following what you've been taught, especially if it was an econ, finance, or accounting class, doesn't always yield the best answer. So thanks.
Thank you, Margaret. What a great talk. You're redesigning the P&L statement and economics. I was just thinking, when we go into the market and we look for ice cream, the only thing that we see is price. So that's the only thing the consumer sees. That's probably why the only thing that the company sees as well. I'm wondering if there's a different way to do that as well to change the whole system. But we'll talk more in the Q&A.